Now entering the squared circle pit, a former NWA World Champion, former ECW World Champion, most importantly, a former WCW Light Heavyweight Champion, and a fellow member of the tribe. Raven, thank you so much for joining me on the squared circle pit on what is the first day of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah, Raven.
It's Hanukkah?
Today's the first day.
Idea.
Well, I'm glad I could bring you this update.
I am so un-Jewish.
So did you even have a bar mitzvah? I never had one.
No, I never had one. You didn't have one either?
No. My parents were like, you could do a bar mitzvah or we can go on a vacation. I was like, I'll take the vacation.
Really? I thought I was the only Jew that didn't get bar mitzvahed.
Nope. I guess we're in an elite class of Jews that refuse the bar
I heard
mitzvah.
the greatest line. This comedian had the greatest line. He goes, we're really good at the 40-year dash.
And I like that you are anti-comedy. You have a podcast now, The Raven Effect. That's what you're doing now. And I like it. And I feel like there's a lot of an old school vibe to the comedy you're into. What are some of your favorite comedies? Is The Jerk one of them? Am I remembering this correctly?
No, that's Disco's favorite movie, or second favorite movie.
Well, what is it?
No, I like The Jerk, but I didn't think it was that spectacular. But some of my favorite comedy movies. Let me think. I can't even. Oh, of course, Fletch, Stripes, Caddyshack, and Monty Python's Holy Grail.
Oh,
those are the four big.
There you go.
Yeah, the four. But I love Henny Youngman. I love that old school comedian.
Yeah.
So and I also love Daniel Tosh. But my stand up is more like it's Mitch Hedberg like is the best one I could say. I mean, it really there's a Stephen Wrightness to it, but it's not monotone,
Right. Yeah. It's mostly one-liners. It's a lot of plays on words, a lot of puns. Have you heard of that? Have you heard of
puns?
Yeah, absolutely.
Puns have a terrible reputation because everybody that's why we bury the Cheers and Jeers guy from TV Guide so much on the podcast, the Raven Effect podcast. New episodes are every Monday. You can listen to it on anything that has podcasts.
Very proud.
It's really funny. If you're expecting a lot of wrestling, don't. I mean, if you're not a wrestling fan, then you'll love it anyway because it has almost no wrestling in it. It's wrestling adjacent. There's really, but we're because I was a wrestler. That's what the sports category, but it should be in the comedy category.
It's you and your co-host Busby. Just you guys riff, right? A lot of riffing.
Yeah, we just riff on everything and try to be. And our goal is to be funny. I mean, if everything should amuse you. There should be nothing that doesn't amuse you in some way. Like even if we hit a heavy topic, we'll still find a way to make it funny.
Yeah. Have you heard of the comedian Neil Hamburger? I think he's totally up your alley.
I've heard of him, but I don't think I've ever seen him.
You got to look up some clips. It's also just one-liners with really nasty punchlines. Like one I remember is like, why did Metallica cut off their long hair? Their barber told them it was the only way they can get out all the matted cum. That's it. That's the joke. So I think
that's funny.
I think it's totally up your alley. But yeah, so this podcast we try to talk about.
That's like a joke I wrote the other day. I just wrote this joke the other day. Is I got a friend who's a vegan. She doesn't eat meat, but she will go down on a fish.
I saw you do the stand-up on the Jericho cruise, and I really like the bit comparing a woman's period to a wrestling match with the getting the. I'm not going to ruin the punchline, but I really I thought that was a good bit as well.
Was it? Wait, what was the punchline?
The punchline was like, and sometimes you get color.
No. That was sex. That was about sex, not a woman's period.
Oh, not a woman's period. You're right. I'm sorry. I fucked that up. It was the color was the period.
It goes something like I forget exactly because that's why my recall is damage from too many chair shots to the head and too many drugs in the 90s. But basically it goes that sex should be more like pro wrestling. There should be winners and losers. There should be a referee to tell you, not the winners and losers. There should be a referee there to tell you, or there should be somebody there to tell you who won or who lost. You should dress in colorful costumes and use foreign objects like a cheese grater. It's phrased better, so it's funnier. And then at the end it goes, and you should get 25 extra for getting color. You know, because if you're a wrestling fan, and getting color means, you know, when you bleed, and if you're not a wrestling fan,
if you're a sex fan, getting color is when you're doing the period sex.
Oh, that's why. Oh,
that's the joke. That's the joke that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I meant like you get 25 extra for color, because in wrestling, the old timer used to get like 25 extra for getting color, for getting blood, for blading yourself.
I see.
Yeah, so it's even funnier. Yeah, your way works too, but my way's funnier. So there.
Well, it's a double entendre. It's a play on words. You're so good at puns. You didn't even pick up on the pun that you were suggesting. It just comes
I did, but I just don't think of that as the joke, though. You know, I think it's funnier because it's an old timey, you know, it's an old timey wrestling film.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So I want you a lot to talk about. A few things to talk about. Well, like the podcast here is about the intersection of music, rock and metal, and pro wrestling, and I feel. The Raven character is a perfect example of that. How you kind of took what was happening with music and made a character that people could immediately know, like, oh, I know who this guy is.
Yeah,
and
I tried to make it 3-dimensional as opposed to 2-dimensional and cookie cutter characters that most people portray.
Yeah, and I feel at the time it was one of the most 3-dimensional characters and the most layered storytelling with the whole angle with Tommy Dreamer and just the whole everything about the character worked and including.
Let me just interrupt for 1 second. My idea was I wanted to take something personal, because inside I act on the surface, I act cool and aloof, but inside, you know, I got anxieties and fears and foibles like everybody else, and I wanted to take that inner turmoil and I wanted to make it so reflective of my character that you knew in any situation exactly how he was going to behave, that he was so realized as a character, so fully realized as a character that you knew if he was put in this situation, you'd be able to go, yeah, he would do that, you know, without even having to think about it.
And like I said, like the whole character was so well defined. Like you wore really cool shirts. You wore like a Melvin shirt, Nevermore. You wore like metal and rock shirts. I spoke to Gabe Sapolsky before, and he mentioned how he would go to metal shops and like shop for shirts and like show you, and you'd kind of pick them out. Like, do you remember like coming up with like the costuming for the character and also using the theme song they used, which was Offspring, Come Out and Play?
Yeah, basically I came up with the name and the outfit all within 5 minutes. Like, it was just an epiphany. Like, I started thinking to myself, all right, what would this character be called? And I go, all right, what's the closest analog I can think of? Well, okay, let's say the Crow. The Crow was his name was Eric Draven. Raven, quote the Raven, nevermore. Boom, I got a name and a catchphrase. I mean, that's how quick it came to me. Like, you know, and I'm sure I thought of other movie characters, but that was the one. Like, when I thought of, okay, let's see, the Crow, you know, the Red Hot Chili Pepper characters in Point Break. But I remember that the Crow character was named Eric Draven, and I said Draven, Raven, quote the Raven, nevermore. Good. Now I'm a catchphrase in the name. And then I go, what do I wear for the outfit? So right away I knew I needed jean shorts. Well, not right away, because first I tried on. I knew my shorts had to be knee length, because that was the style, and that was what somebody who dressed that way would wear, and that's what I wore anyway. So I got with jean shorts. Then I thought, well, I got to add some flannel to it, because, you know, it was the Nirvana era, so there had to be a little flannel. So at first I put a flannel shirt on and cut off the sleeves, and I was like, nah, I look like Big Josh. Remember Matt Bourne's character, Big Josh?
Yeah. Dude, I could see
I look like Big Josh, so that's not it. So I go, so then I go, all right, oh wait, I'll tie the flannel around my waist. Boom, that's set. All right, now do I need a T-shirt? I always liked wearing it. I like the T-shirt because then I realized I need a leather jacket, you know, which I had a leather jacket that I wore all the time. So I was like, I'll just put my leather jacket on and I'm set. Jean shorts, Doc Martens, Doc Martens, jean shorts, flannel shirt, and a leather jacket. But then I started thinking, I'm going to wear the leather jacket every day. There needs to be variety for this character. Everybody needs variety, but I'm never going to change the jean shorts. So I got to have something that changes every episode, which would be my T-shirt. So I put on a T-shirt, and because I've never had, I used to have big arms and big shoulders, but I had no chest and and I had a big waist. So I cut off the sleeves of the T-shirt, show off my arms and shoulders, wore the T-shirt so that way it would hide my waistline anyway, so I don't have to worry about it, and my lack of chest. And also then I could change the shirt every day, every match. So every match you're seeing me wear something different. Just like people would change their ring tights all the time.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's something that you like. Just the attention to the little details like that really made the character stood out. And I remember you saying in like a previous interview, just like every wrestler should come out with a jacket or just something to take off to like just look cool.
You gotta have a ring jacket. It became a running gag because I would say it so much, but it's true. And it's like, and I remember when America's Most Wanted, we were in TNA, and they finally got a new ring jacket. And I'm like, sweet. I go, how many did you get? They go, we just got one. I'm like, and they were all disappointed. I'm like, what? I go, well, think about it. They go, you're going to wear one new jacket. You wear it out. The next time you wear it, okay, we've seen it. Third time, we always see this. Okay, so I go, and they're like, no way. This new jacket's going to be great for months. By the third show, they were like, yeah, you're right. Because you need to have a variety. So that's why you need to have 5 jackets, or at least you used to, because you'd have 4 weeks of TV and the fifth, and then the pay-per-view. So you'd have to have 5 jackets that you could rotate, so people never saw you in the same jacket until 6 weeks later, or 5 weeks later. And jackets don't have to be expensive. I mean, I had 12 or something when I was in Portland wrestling. I was making, in fact, I just did an interview with a guy from Portland about Portland wrestling, and we never even talked about this, but like, we started to talk about it, but we didn't get to it. But like, it was money-wise, this was 89.90. I was making $500 to $550 a week plus pictures, so I was making $700-800 a week at least, which is a really good living. It's not something you can make million. You can't put a lot of weight on it, but you can make it. That's a great living for a 23-year-old and an 89 or 90. But it's still, to buy a bunch of ring jackets, like Flair used to spend thousands on his. So I was like, I'm not doing that, but you got to have ring jackets. So I would go to TJ Maxx. I'd buy a jean jacket, like a really, a unique one, because they always had the weird, unique ones that didn't sell. And then I'd get I went to the fabric store and bought a bunch of neon fabric, because neon was in back then. And I bought a bunch of fringe. Fringe is cheap. And I just had somebody sew it all together. And then all of a sudden I had like 12 ring jackets, and then a lot of them I would cut holes in, and then I would wash them and dry them so that they would fray. So I had frayed holes all over them. Sometimes I'd add those little metal things you see on leather jackets,
the studs.
Spikes, not spikes, but the little metal knobs.
Studs.
And add those to the jacket. And I had or I'd find like an iron-on patch, so I had like 12 ring jackets, my second year in the business. And it made me look like a star. And to be a star, you got to look like a star. And guys don't get that.
Right. It's a cosmetic business ultimately. It's all.
What's that?
It's a cosmetic business. It's all based on looks.
Yeah.
You got to look the part.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the great thing about wearing a T-shirt is you never have to, like, if you're a bodybuilder guy like Lex Luger, if you ever lose your body, your gimmick's shot. You know what I mean? So you have to stay in perfect shape ever. I never had to stay in perfect shape because all I had to do was have arms, Yeah,
you could eat that burger and not feel guilty about it.
Right. But I mean,
what about the shirts? Like, were you discriminate about what kind of shirts the Raven character would wear? Would it be bands that you like, or just like shirts that look cool?
It was all, at the beginning, it was all bands that were cool or presumed to be cool. Like, I never really listened to the Melvins, but I knew who they were, so I got the Melvins. Plus, it was a cool shirt. I didn't listen to Ministry, but I had a Ministry shirt. I had Suicidal Tendencies. I never really listened to them. It's funny. My musical tastes were so not Raven. They were, I like 70s soul, the 70s Philly soul. I like I love black dance music from the 70s.
Like disco, basically, or you wouldn't call it disco. Would you say disco, or is it not like
like
R&B?
Disco. I loved it. I mean, I love anything with a beat. You know, it's
Yeah.
like there's an interview I read with Motorhead with Lemmy, and Lemmy loves Britney Spears because it's got melody. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
You would never catch Lemmy playing Britney Spears, but that's what he likes.
Right.
And it's funny because his music doesn't really have a lot of melody to it. You know, Motorhead. You know, it's not the most melodic, but that's what he likes to listen to. That's what I like to listen to. Or 70s classic rock. Like basically, my tuner was stuck in the 70s. And then I liked alternative 80s, like the Cult, you know, and then I loved Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots. I mean, that was a great set of years of music. But
so like more of the alternative grunge stuff, like Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins, like those type of bands were more your alley than the more heavy stuff.
No, those are I Soundgarden, Stone Temple. I like Stone Temple Pilots better than Nirvana. I loved Stone Temple Pilots.
I agree. They were great.
Yeah, I thought it was such a shame they got labeled a ripoff of Nirvana because they weren't. But you know, Pearl Jam I liked. Although the first time I heard Pearl Jam 10, I hated it. You know, it sounded all the same until I listened to it with open ears, and I was like, oh yeah, now I get it. But you know, it all depends how you hear something the first time. But the stuff I would always go back to would be the 70s, like 70s classic rock, 70s Philly soul, like the OJs, stuff like that. Because that's where I was born in Philly in the 70s. You know, I was born in the 60s, but I grew up in the 70s in Philly. You know, so you go back. I think people go back to the music they listened to when they were 10 to 12 is what they listen to when they get older.
Yeah, I kind of find myself doing that now as well, or kind of going back and listening to music that was of the era when I was that age, but I wasn't necessarily listening to like 80s kind of, you know, New York, like new wave sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, I liked the Cure. The Cure was amazing.
Depeche Mode. How do you feel about those guys?
What's that?
Depeche Mode. Were you a Depeche Mode guy?
Depeche Mode, I liked. I didn't love them, but I liked them.
Okay.
But the Cult, I loved the Cult. They were amazing. Although I saw them in concert once and they were terrible. But I think it was the last stop on their tour before they went to like South America, or they just got back from South America, so they were wiped out or something.
Right.
But they were free. They were free tickets too, which made it worse. Like for free tickets, you want them to be good. You know what I mean?
I'm less bothered if it's bad for free ticket. Like, good thing I didn't pay for this crap. Like,
you would think that. You would think that, but it's
I guess you still
bothersome.
Right. You still make the effort. You have to drive there. You pay for parking. Probably get a drink or whatever.
It actually, I would have thought that too, and I did think that until it actually happened, and then I was like, now I'm more disappointed than if I would have paid. Because if I would have paid, I could have just decried it as, you know, well, what a waste of money. But I didn't waste any money, you know. So now I.
It's just a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was so disappointing, but I listened to like I hated top 40 80s. 80s top 40 was the worst. But I liked the 80s, you know, the alternative, the new wave-ish stuff that wasn't, you know, radio friendly, you know, so it wasn't on the radio very often.
Yeah.
But eventually I stopped listening to current music about 2000, I guess, or before that. And then I started listening. Then I listen to podcasts now, so I don't even listen to music. Although, let me just say this: every time I have a bunch of alarms throughout the day to go off, and I use, you know, so I have music playing instead of the alarm go off, and so every so often I'll rotate songs in there, and I haven't heard this in forever, but I had Brother Kane and Fools Shine On. What a great song that is!
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I'm sure I've heard it. It's just
I'll sing it to you, but I sing horribly. And fools shine on.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I've definitely heard it. And you have a majestic voice. You could have been a singer. You could have been a singer.
I could have been a lousy singer.
Yeah, sure. Well,
if I could have been a singer, I wouldn't have went into wrestling. That's fair. That was the only thing I would have rather have done.
That's fair. And so, like, you do have quite a mind for wrestling. And one thing I thought that was kind of was pretty cool, and I mean, career-wise, maybe not so much for you, was when you were hired as a producer for WWE. Now, I know you said like they kind of thought you were too small to be a wrestler or whatever, but like you still had to convince Vince McMahon, or like how did you convince him that you knew what you were doing, like booking wise, where he gave you authority to like come up with scripts and stuff like that?
Basically, I did. Jerry Lawler had a some legal issues, so he left the company,
Mm-hmm.
and they slid me in as a color commentator with Vince. And so I used to do commentary with Vince on Superstars, which was the #1 show they had before, even though until Raw became the #1 show.
Right. I mean, I watched it. Yeah, it was right.
Yeah, so I commentated with him, and he saw how prepared I would come with bits and stuff, and how good I did, and he realized that I should be behind the scenes, which I didn't want to be, because I knew I was qualified for it. I just didn't want to do it, but it wasn't like I was getting any other offers. So I took that, and then that's eventually why I quit, because I wanted to wrestle. But I mean, he was grooming me to be on the booking committee with Pat and Bruce before there even was a booking committee.
Yeah, and that's pretty. Like, he clearly saw something in you, which it didn't seem like he trusted that many people around that time.
No, I mean, but Pat and Bruce kept, they kept screwing me over left and right. So I mean, I never would have survived it. I mean, I don't know how Russo survived it. He came after me. I don't know how he survived it, because those two were so cutthroat, because they saw it as somebody coming in to take their job,
Right. And there was a lot of there's a lot of office politics that you have to. It's not like you're into it for the wrestling, and for them it's like, oh, you got to dress a certain way, arrive a certain time, and that's not your style.
Oh, they made me wear suits. They made it was a big project to turn me into a mensch. Seriously, it was. And so they got me into a suit and tie, and I would just. As soon as work was over, I'd go take off my tie, put on my leather jacket, go to the club, stay out till 4 a.m, and then start over the next day.
So did the ECW opportunity come, and then you decided to quit the job, or did you quit the job and then were like, I need to find a gig wrestling, and that's how you kind of got?
I quit the job, and thought I would, and figured that. What do you think? What happened? I quit the job. And I was going to hopefully go to Smoky Mountain, because Cornette kept saying he'd bring me in, and he kept blowing me off. Thank God he did, because eventually I saw the ECW show, because I moved from Connecticut back to Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. That's the hub for all indie shows, because, the shows are either in New York, New Jersey, Philly, or Maryland. That's where you can make the most money doing the most amount of indies, because, the most population. You move to the South, there's probably just as many shows in the South, but they don't pay anything because there's not as much income down here. Mm. So moving back to Philly was, plus I love Philly. So I was like, I'm more than happy to move back there. So I caught an episode of ECW, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, I got to be on this show. This show is amazing. It's nothing like what the critics claim. The sheets were all like, oh, it's all garbage wrestling, blah, blah, blah. Nothing like that. It was a revolution in wrestling. I mean, it was so... And I caught it just as the wave was starting to
yeah.
I analogize it to as if everybody's out there waiting for the perfect wave, and I just happen to, and it's 4 PM, they've been waiting all day, and I just happen to paddle out and turn around and oh, here comes the wave, and then I just jump right on it. They did all the groundwork was done. And all I had to do was just jump on it and
ride that wave.
Cowabunga.
Yeah, I remember the first episode of ECW I saw. I lived in New York my whole life, and for some reason, in one room in my house, the antenna would get the Philly channels, and just channel 48. I forget the call letters, but every night they would have wrestling at 10 p.m. and it'd be a different promotion. It'd be like IWCCW. A few other ones, and then one night it was ECW, and immediately ECW stuck out from all the other ones. And
it's an epiphany.
Yeah, and the first episode that I saw, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was you with Beulah, and Beulah revealing that she had Tommy Dreamer's baby, and I was like, "What?" Like the all-time classic. And I was like, from that moment, I was so hooked, just from the story of first of all, I recognized you at. I was like, oh, that's Scotty Flamingo. What's he doing now? And just, it was so cool seeing all these wrestlers you notice from all these other promotions, but they're doing grittier characters, cool storylines. The whole feud, every week it'd be you and the Bruise Brothers and whoever were your lackeys, and you just find a new way to get on top of Tommy Dreamer. And I was hooked completely.
The best thing about the pregnancy angle was the funniest part was when I go. When she goes, it's not yours, and the audience, somebody yells out, it's Mimi's.
I have to go back and listen to that. But I wrote you just immediately attacked Stevie, right? Because you thought it was him.
Yeah, I attacked Stevie because it's not. No, I know what it was. It was I forget exactly, but it was I attacked Stevie and he goes, it's not Stevie's, and then somebody yells out, it's me.
I love that. That's great. So I mean, you had a great run in ECW, and then you cashed in and went the mainstream. And I think it was kind of cool when you got to WCW because you were kind of booking your own promotion within WCW. Like you were kind of removed from the NWO stuff. You had your own little feuds and your own people. And you were you just basically writing all your own stuff?
Not quite, not exactly. In fact, what happened was when I got there, Terry Taylor came up with the idea to put me with to sit in the stands, which was brilliance. I mean, absolute brilliance. He's also the one that came up with the Ravens rules matches, which I like, but I don't like. In the same, here's the thing: when there's no rules, then you don't get heat. You know what I mean? You don't get the same kind of heat.
Yeah, you can't cheat your way.
So I would have rather at first I would have rather not had the Raven rules, and then for the drop to hold on the chair, I would have had the ref distracted by Stevie, and then use the drop to hold on the chair, get rid of it. But by the same token, what I also knew was if you pretend that if you do everything behind the ref's back, people forget that there aren't any rules, and they still get mad, which I learned in ECW. So I was like, well, this will be cool anyway. So it doesn't matter. And it worked out great because it was something to identify with me with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
but it was also, but people forget. People would always want to do stuff when they'd be in a Ravens rules match. They want to do stuff, and I was like, not in front of the ref. And they're like, well, why? There's no rules. I go, because it doesn't have the same. If you do it behind the ref's back, people get mad because they're conditioned. They're psychologically conditioned to get mad. You're doing it behind the ref's back, and you should get mad about that. So you forget that there's no rules because you're caught up in a storyline, which all goes back to
Otherwise,
back to psychology, which that's my specialty. You know, because human nature is human nature. You know, like I remember one time somebody said, wow, wrestling psychology is like human psychology. I go, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Psychology is psychology. Yeah. I mean, it's human behavior, what we're conditioned for. It's why I was always able to do unique stuff, because if people expected me to do one thing, I would do something else. Like I saw this spot Colonel De Beers did it in Portland, and it literally blew my mind. It's such a simple spot, but you know, like for a while back in the late 80s, early 90s, the babyface would be out on the floor. He'd go to get in and he'd give the heel 2 gut shots at the ropes, and then he'd do a sunset flip over him, over the top rope and over the guy and sunset flip him.
Yeah.
That became a pretty standard spot.
Right.
So one day I'm watching Colonel De Beers. When the guy did the sunset flip, he just moved.
You just saw it
He
coming.
just moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he was wise to it, like he'd seen it happen enough, so he moved out of the way, and the guy crashed and burned. And all of a sudden, the light went on. It's like I get that you can confound expectations and get and you can do things that look like you're doing what everybody else is doing, and then you make a left turn and you'll blow their minds.
Right.
And it's thinking out. It was really what got me thinking outside the box, and which is also why I love hardcore matches, because see, when people get in hardcore matches, all they do is they go back and forth. I'm like, why would you change the psychology? It's babyface shines, heel gets heat, babyface makes a comeback. You don't change the match style because it's hardcore. You just use the weapons as alternative props.
Yeah, and I like how, like, in your matches, you would build to the drop toe hold, to the chair. Like, everyone's anticipating the spot, and you keep kind of teasing it, as opposed to doing 50 hardcore spots. You really make the 1 or 2 in the match count. Yeah.
Or I would do a big spot early, like with a crash and burn, so we'd both be injured, so I could sell the rest of the match. Mm-hmm. So me and Dreamer would do spots that would injure both of us, like in the first 4 minutes in a 20-minute match, and then we'd have 16 minutes to just act like we're injured and milk everything and get the drama out of everything. Whereas, you know, because the more injured you are, if you sell it right, the more you can take your time, and the more everything means everything because you're already hurt. You know, but guys don't think that way. They just think, you know, like, and I still don't understand why people, when they get in a hardcore match, they just think, well, I'll hit you with a pot, you hit me with a pan, I hit you with that, you hit me with this. why do you change the psychology? And that's why my matches, I maintain, always were so much more, it's why my matches got over the way they did and didn't become just, a garbage match.
Yeah. There was a story to them too, I feel.
Yeah, there's a story, because you still got to tell a story, but back and forth, whether it's that's what a lot of the high spot guys do, is they'll have a match, they'll go 10 minutes, and then they'll go into the comeback and the finish, and then they'll do 18 minutes of false finishes. Well, that's not a false finishes anymore. 18 minutes, now you're just doing a back and forth match after you already had a half a match before,
Right.
There's diminishing returns. To me, a false finish is when the crowd goes 1, 2,
Mm-hmm.
It's not a 2 count. Just because it's a 2 count doesn't mean it's a false finish. And if you don't set it up right, it doesn't mean it's a false finish. It's just a 2 count if you don't set it up right,
Yeah, that's true. And you see that a lot. I feel like it's a big crutch now, the false finishes, to try to get the crowd to be hyped and then thinking like, wow, this is a great match. It's like, well, they're just doing their finishes back and forth usually.
And how into the match, how emotionally invested. See, because wrestling, the key with wrestling is you're emotionally invested. That's what makes you buy tickets. That's what makes you pay to see the stars you love and the stars you hate. But you'll never pay for a guy you just like or dislike. You'll only pay for the see. Like, that's why main events sell fights. That's why you can have a fight with, like, Mike Tyson sold out zillions of fights with no undercard, because you're paying for the main event. Conor McGregor, when he fought Floyd Mayweather, he could have had the most, it wasn't the greatest undercard. Wait, was it? I forget. But it could have been the worst undercard ever. It still would have done that business because you're paying for the main event, because you're emotionally invested in these people. And so if you're not emotionally invested, then it doesn't have any resonance to people at home. Wait, I lost my train of thought. So basically, what was the point I started making?
We're talking about the storytelling that was important in the match, and that you had to care about the characters as opposed to the false finishes.
Yeah, no, but I was leading to a big point. Hang on. I'll just talk until I see if I can discover it again. But you so you're emotionally invested in the characters, and so if you're not emotionally invested in them, you're not going to pay to see them, and you're not going to be a big star. You have to be loved or hated, and to be loved or hated, you have to be a star. I'm getting repetitious. I'm trying, man. I had a really killer point to this story, and I forgot.
If we move on, maybe it can come to. But really quickly, you mentioned that you were drugged out for most of the 90s, and this is a sensitive topic, so if you don't want to talk about it too much, I understand. But I was like, the thing that I wondered about is, like, would people bring you stuff? Would you carry stuff across state lines? Like, how would that?
I only did pharmaceutical stuff, so.
Oh, okay, so it's all prescription.
Yeah, it's always had a prescription. Yeah.
I see.
Oh. But it's like I'll talk about it because I'm not embarrassed about it, but I don't like to talk about it in a braggadocious way.
No, I don't.
It's why on my podcast we always give, because sometimes my stories are going to be braggadocious and they're going to be drug-fueled adventures. But that's why we always give an addiction hotline number at the end of the show, and a website that you can, addictionandrecovery.org, if you need to learn about it, or if you have family members with problems. Because, that sounds like a great time, but man, there was so much sadness. There was so much other stuff that we don't talk about that's miserable, and it took me forever to get clean, and there's a lot of tragedy involved.
Right, I'm sure you lost a lot of friends, so it wasn't. Yeah. I didn't mean it that way. But
no, I'm not saying you did. I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying, but that's why when I talk about it, I usually talk about the good times, but I don't talk about the bad times. And so it becomes something that people want to do. Oh, wow, look how much fun he had. That's why I wanted to do drugs. Look how much fun they are. But they're also annoying and tragic and painful and devastating. And so, we try. And so whenever we always give the addiction hotline number and the address for the website for addictionandrecovery.org. But what we really plug, though, we just list them at the end on most shows. But if we tell a drug-fueled story, we always try and say, look, sounds like it's a great time, and it was. But there was all these shitty times, too. And if you have problems, get help, and here's the number. Because I think there has to, because who wants to hear about the shitty times? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And there was a reason you were doing it. It's like you were, you had a crazy schedule. You were likely in
No,
constant
that's
pain?
not it.
No,
That's
you were
not
just
it.
doing it for the fun.
I did it for the fun. I did it because I was an addict.
Okay.
You know, and I did it because that's what I wanted to do. You know, you can say I could be a hypocrite and say, oh no, I just did it because of the schedule. That's bullshit. You know, you didn't do it because of that. You did it because you liked it. You know.
Well, I appreciate the honesty then.
And honestly, it's fun. It's fun until it's not fun.
Right.
And then once it's not fun, it's not fun. You know, and that's the problem is you can't. It's hard to determine whether you're somebody who can do a little or you're going to do a lot. You know, and you may think you're only going to do a little like I did, but I ended up doing a lot. You know, and then once it becomes an addiction, then it becomes a long-term nightmare. But you're still going to have big high spots you're still going to have great times during those nightmares, but you're going to have more nightmares than you have high spots. And those are the things that nobody talks about. And those are why I always believe you have to give the caveat that if you're going to tell good stories, you have to make sure you mention that if you're going to tell rock and roll excess stories about sex, drugs, and, a couple of chicks you pick up, and you're all doing drugs and getting laid, blah, blah, blah. Sounds like a fantastic time. Who wouldn't want to do that? But, then the next
right,
day.
But then the next morning, yeah, exactly. No one talks about that, all the puking around you and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so I just feel that it's incumbent on the person telling the story of the good times to make sure that they point out that it's not all candy and roses, and so in many cases it's death,
Yeah.
and
the
so many people's death or suicide attempts, because there's only three ways to get out of it. You either get clean, which is very, very hard, you go to jail, or you die. Those are it. There's only three ways out.
So would you say you're sober now or rock star sober?
Oh, I've been sober for years.
Oh,
I've been sober for years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
For 10, 15 years.
Was there did something just click for you, or it was a long process to get to the
No, I knew at a certain point that I'd gotten too deep into it and it was time to get out. And then it was the nightmare of getting out of it. Mm-hmm. But that's too long a story to tell. Let me just.
I mean, you can say that. I'm sure it's on your podcast.
I've been clean. I've been clean for 100 years now. It seems like, and to be honest, I don't know how I ever wanted to live that lifestyle because I don't anymore. But I'm very lucky. Mm-hmm. A lot of people live with that, one day at a time. Which that's got to be horrible to live with. I don't have that. I don't have any cravings, any desires, which I'm so lucky. I can't stress enough how lucky I am because. Most people live with one day at a time where they don't know whether they're going to use one day or the next. I knew when I quit that I was done. Like I just knew it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Not because I'm stronger willpower, not because of anything, just because of my brain chemistry. I was lucky enough to be able to quit and as my addictionologist said, he goes, I don't think you were ever a true addict. I just think I've never seen anybody who abused drugs as bad as you.
Well, whenever you do something, you do it to the fullest. That's just a personality trait of yours.
Yeah. Oh, huge. I'd give so much. I'd give so much to change so much. Everybody says, "Oh, I have no regrets." Oh, I got so many regrets. I have thousands, probably not thousands, but I got hundreds of regrets. And I would do things so much differently if I could now, but I can't. And so that's the path I chose. And so I try to look back on it as with both fondness and with that poor kid needed a hug. That younger me just needed a hug really bad,
mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, all you can really control is the present. So as long as you're doing it right in the today, I think that's fine.
Yeah. That's all you can control. It's also why I don't like to live in the past because it already happened. I already did it.
Yeah, you can't control.
I mean, I don't mind occasionally. It's why I don't do a lot of podcasts other than my own because I don't like to dwell in the past because, I already did it. I had fun. I got the T-shirt. I threw up on the T-shirt. I bought another T-shirt. I threw up on that one. But eventually, after throwing up on 87 T-shirts, I finally grew out of the T-shirt, and it no longer fits. Mm-hmm. And so basically, it's like like I was just talking. I told you I was talking to the guy about Portland wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun to look back on it. It was a nice hour of looking back, but I don't understand how guys can sit there and watch their matches, and just spend their whole lives watching all their old stuff, because then you're not living. You're just reminiscing. Like, I mean, it's always fun to reminisce, but I don't want to live there. I don't want to live in the past. I don't mind checking in every so often, but I want to live in the current.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you. You gotta create new memories. You can't just constantly talk about old memories.
That's exactly. I'm still trying to create new fun and new adventures to have for myself now. So why would I want to rest on my laurels when I'm still trying to create?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of fun on your podcast, The Raven Effect. If we could end on a slightly more upbeat note, because you've already given me a lot of your time, which I really appreciate. There was a podcast with Jericho you had where you talked about like Rolling Stone did like their top 40 SNL character, or like they ranked every SNL character, and it was so interesting to me because I kind of watch SNL with the same kind of mind that I watch pro wrestling, and it was interesting to see that you had a very similar thought to it. Like, do you watch the current SNL at all?
Yeah. I haven't watched last night's yet. I was going to watch it when I hung up with you.
Well, yeah, like I kind of watch it like a wrestling, like who's getting over, what bits are getting over, and like to me, like I think, like, what is your opinion of SNL, like this current run of it?
Okay, yeah, it's funny. Like, I watched it for a while, then I stopped watching, then I watch again, then I stop. Probably like how wrestling fans watch wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And when it gets big again, you start watching like the Kristen Wiig and who was the
Fred Armisen?
Who was the guy on top after Will Ferrell?
Andy Samberg? Like, what was it? What were the bits?
Oh, yeah, no, not Sandberg. But who? Okay, wait, yeah. So, like, right around that era, I tuned in a little bit, but I didn't watch a lot. And then I tuned in a couple of years ago, and it was all right, so I tuned out. And then I started watching again recently. I guess last year I started watching again, and it's starting to pick up steam. Like, I love Kenan Thompson.
Yeah, he always delivers. Yeah.
It's like they finally found a black guy who wasn't just a token black guy since Eddie Murphy. Because Garrett Morris seemed like he was an afterthought half the time.
Mm-hmm.
Although he was much more used than like what's the guy, Tim Meadows?
Yeah.
He seemed worthless to me, but I didn't watch a lot of that era. But he seemed kind of worthless. Eddie Murphy was huge. He was monstrous. But then after that, it seemed like the black guy was just the black guy until Kenan Thompson kind of put his own spin on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's got a lot of great characters, and his impersonations, I feel, always work. They always get a laugh out of me.
But the main person that draws me is Kate McKinnon. She's just absolutely amazing.
She is a total superstar. I agree, and I watched the movie she was in, and like the movie wasn't even good, but she totally carried
great.
it. Yeah, like all of her lines she nailed it. She's the best, and I like how she's playing all these male roles of these male Republicans that they're just seething that a lesbian is playing them. So I'm into that.
Her Jeff Sessions is unbelievable.
Yeah, she does.
And the way she decided the thought that she decided that she's descended from raccoons or possums or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. I love knowing that it's going to piss the person they're making fun of off.
Yeah, and then also what's really cool is she can fart on cue.
Oh, I didn't know.
Because did you ever see the movie Christmas Party?
Yeah, with
what's his name?
T.J. Miller.
In it? Really
Jason
funny, but had some Me Too move problems.
T.J. Miller, Jason Bateman.
T.J. Miller, yeah, I love T.J. Miller, but haven't heard from him since so maybe the Me Too thing was legit. I don't know.
He was just doing stand-up in New York. He's around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But but not to get off on the subject, on the side note, but so I saw her in an interview show, or maybe it was T.J. Miller, and he was talking about how she could fart on cue because she does that one scene where she farts, but she actually she didn't have to have a fake fart noise. She could actually fart on cue.
That's crazy.
And she's beautiful. And she's beautiful, too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, she's
And
great.
Kate McKinnon's like, I'm like, I'd love to know what she's really like in person because, I mean, she's funny. She's not afraid to look foolish. She's beautiful. She can fart on cue. I mean, that's a girl to take home to mom.
Yeah, she's definitely the breakout star of the show and the one that kind of is like the glue of that show.
Yeah, or it's like Michael Che is always going to hit you with a black point of view, which I love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's always had, he gives you that point of view that we're not as white people we're not allowed to say, but it's still exactly apropos of society, and you're going to get that from him. But if he got really fat, or if he got fat, I don't care. But if he got unfunny, I would say he got unfunny. Like he was not funny on the Daily Show, not funny. And then they hired him away. I was like, why would the Saturday Night Live hire him away? Now I think he's amazing, but I also think Michael Che didn't start out that funny on Saturday Night Live either. Like he would stumble on his words. Now his stumbling is funny because it's part of his character. But yeah, so I mean, and Colin Jost is always like a workhorse. I think they got a great cast now. I hope that and like, you know what I hated was when they would get down on what's her name, the tall black chick, Leslie Jones. Leslie Jones. Man, that was like, she is so absolutely fall down funny. Mm-hmm. She's hysterical. But because she's a big black girl, they ragged her into the death in the Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like with that, like I thought that whole controversy was dumb. Like it in no way affects your enjoyment of the original movies that they're redoing it.
It was better than the original. It was way funnier.
Really? I didn't find. I was kind of bored with it. I kind of was like,
I laughed out loud at it. I thought the original is never, nobody's gonna be able to touch the original because it was the original, because it's just a stellar piece of work, but it wasn't laugh out loud funny. I mean, it was entertaining as hell. It was amusing as hell, but it wasn't.
Right.
There was no gutbusters in there. But the women's remake was hysterical.
Well, like I said, Kate McKinnon stole all of her scenes, definitely. And like, if to say something positive about the new Ghostbusters, I thought Kate McKinnon totally stole her scenes and was great and was like the constant like humor in the movie.
Melissa McCarthy is the funniest person on anything.
I love her, but she was playing like the straight woman. Like she wasn't doing the bits. She was like reacting to this. She was like playing like the stuff.
And she's still funny, but she's still funny reacting. Like it's like Cartman is funny no matter what. Cartman's always funny, even if he's just saying the most innocuous thing. It's still funny because his voice is funny.
I hear you.
I'm a big fan of Cartman. You know who else is funny? King Julian the lemur. Hysterical.
Not familiar with King Julian. What is that?
The Madagascar movies?
Oh, no. I haven't seen those.
And he also has like a half-hour cartoon on Netflix. The Madagascar movies are uproariously funny. But it's mostly the lemurs. Because Sacha Baron Cohen was actually the original King Julian the lemur, and then another guy took over for him and did an amazing job. But the character is so psychotic. He would be like a loony. He's a cross between Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. Like if you took those two and put them together, and you'd have a lemur named King Julian.
I love these movie recommendations. I think the audience is really gonna appreciate them.
Yeah, and then the other recommendation I'll give, I'd say the best actiony movie ever, like with mystery and all that, and even though the special effects are weak for the monster, is Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Oh, I haven't checked that out. I'll have to look into that.
It was like at one point it was the biggest grossing French film of all time, but it's not a Frenchy film. It's it's not like all you do is they redub it in English, and it's weird. The star looks exactly like Triple H. Oddly enough, there's a side.
I see. Yeah, like with the long hair, the old school Triple H. Well, to wrap up, do you like? Are you over wrestling now? Do you keep? I mean, I'm assuming you keep up a little bit for the podcast, but would you watch it?
I don't watch it at all. I don't watch anything.
You're done.
No, I just have no interest. I lost interest when WWE stopped using me, or when didn't use me well. it broke my heart, and I just lost interest. And I'm a completist, so I'd have to watch. Like I always watch every wrestling show. I'd have to watch every wrestling. I can't watch that much. I don't have that much time, and there's too much good TV out.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, even back then in 2000 when I stopped watching, you'd have one or two good matches on the show, and you'd have to watch. Whereas you have to watch a whole show 2 hours or 3 hours to get a couple good segments. Whereas back when I first started watching it, when I started watching wrestling, it was an hour show, and you'd be lucky if there was a good segment on there. You know what I mean?
Right.
If there'd be, because it was all squash matches back in the day. But that's what I grew up on. But then once wrestling started getting good, started getting where they'd have competitive matches on TV, which the reason they never did was because that's what drew you to the house show, to make you pay money. But once they started doing that, you get spoiled, and now like I couldn't sit through a 3-hour show. Plus 3 hours is too long.
Yeah, well,
way too much.
I recommend getting a DVR, fast forwarding, getting it through it in an hour, if even.
I can't. I'm a completist, so I'd have to watch the whole thing, and I'd have to stop and go, oh, let me see what's going on here. Oh, this isn't any good. Maybe it gets good. I'd have to watch.
Right.
And I just don't have any interest. Wrestling doesn't do it for me. It didn't give me my Jones anymore because I've been there, done it, and outgrew the T-shirt.
Well, Raven, thank you so much for taking time to hang out with me. It's been such a pleasure. One of these days, maybe if we see each other in person, you can tell me about that 7 Deadly Sins storyline that you came up with at WWE. Never used. Or no, they did the 7 Deadly Sins, but you had another story.
No, they did. They started it. They didn't do it right. They started it, and then they let me go like 2 weeks into it. But it is the greatest storyline I've ever written. When we get 1,000 5-star reviews on the podcast, I'm going to tell the whole storyline, how it was supposed to play out, everything.
I love it.
And it's nothing. It's really the best thing I've ever created. And we're at 757 5-star reviews, which is a lot we haven't even been doing it we've barely been doing it for a year. So that's a lot of 5-star reviews.
All right. So, well, that's a good teaser. Yeah, absolutely.
So get people to give 5-star reviews. Just go to applepodcast.com or Apple Podcasts and then just give it a 5-star review to Raven Effect Podcast.
Yeah, if you want to hear more Raven, every week, The Raven Effect, you and your buddy Busby.
And if you don't, even if you don't, just go give it a 5-star review, because that helps our rating.
Yeah, do it for me, because I'm really curious what this, and I'm going to go and give you a 5-star review, because I'm really curious about the 7 Deadly Sins. You've been building it up for years. I want to hear what this storyline is.
It is far and away, because obviously it's based on the movie 7, but, in the movie 7, the guy's raping chicks with sword dildos or whatever. You can't do that on TV. So how do you get that psychological damage without those kind of viciousness things that they did in the movie? And that's why I'm so proud of it, because I had to come up with a way to make these things have meaning and psychological terror to them, and to totally inhabit those sins, and not in a hokey way, but in a way where people go, oh man, what the hell? This is so wrong, but yet so fascinating and cringeworthy, but you can't look away. So I mean, if I'd have got to do it, which is when I pitched it to Vince, I'll tell you about that next time I talk to you. I'll leave that as a cliffhanger.
Awesome. Well, you're welcome back.